ongoing conflict in the mineral-rich regions of the Democratic Republic of Congo, characterized by targeted and indiscriminate violence, has resulted in over 6 million deaths since 1998. So why are Western multinationals such as Apple involved in the smuggling of minerals from Congo amid the genocide in this country? President Tebboune of Algeria is demanding that France acknowledges its crimes committed during the colonial period in the country. Will France acknowledge that it killed 5.6 million Algerians during its brutal colonial rule over this country? And to discuss the move by the Democratic Republic of Congo to file a criminal case against Apple over its use of blood minerals from conflict zones in the country, we have contacted Hassan Loget. Now, he is the co-founder of Media Justice Africa. And for more on the attempts by France to destabilize Algeria, we have contacted Amour Chabi. Amour, he is a journalist and a political analyst, and he's also the managing editor of Atlas Times, Algiers. This is Africa Today. I'm Mubarak Kenya. Stay with us. Do you know your smartphone might have been manufactured using blood minerals? So might your computer, iPad, and other electronics. Now, how does this happen? Technological advancements and the proliferation of smartphones and electronics have dramatically transformed our daily lives. However, beneath the surface of these technological marvels lies a complex and often troubling reality: the exploitation of what is known as blood minerals in regions like the Democratic Republic of Congo. Blood minerals, also known as conflict minerals, refer to minerals that are mined in regions where their extraction and trade are linked to severe human rights abuses and funding of armed conflicts. The DRC has filed a criminal case against Apple, accusing the US-based global tech giant of fueling the war against the country's eastern region by using in its products what have been deemed as blood minerals. One of the minerals is tantalum, a rare earth metal extracted from coltan, 64% of whose global deposit is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The ongoing conflict in the mineral-rich DRC has resulted in over 6 million deaths since 1998. So why is this US tech giant Apple adamant about using blood minerals from Congo, despite concerns raised over the last decade?
Democratic Republic of Congo sues Apple over blood minerals. The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo is investigating how Apple relies on supply chains for illegally extracted and siphoned minerals from the eastern part of the country, especially tungsten and tantalum, that are critical for electronics, automotive, and aerospace industries.
The spokesperson of the government in Kinshasa says they have enough evidence against Apple. Let's take a listen.
We have evidence that proves that Apple has benefited from the circle of blood minerals like cobalt.
Now, Mr. Hassan Lagen, our first question. What are the main allegations made by the Democratic Republic of Congo against the US tech giant Apple regarding the use of blood minerals? And has the DRC presented a strong case?
This case is historic partly because it brings focus, using Apple as a case study, to the human rights violations that have been perpetrated in the east of Congo. The government, through their lawyers, the DRC government, have taken the case and they've called this matter genocide, meaning a genocide for economic gain. And they're basically arguing that for years, millions of people have been displaced and hundreds of thousands been killed, largely for the strategic minerals that are in the Kivu province and the rest of the country, if you like. And these wars of aggression, supported by M23 and others, have to be addressed and have been addressed by international bodies. So the big issue is that Apple is accused of using resources that come from a war zone, and it is called blood diamonds, you know. So let me just add one more point, that this is taking place at a time when there's a conflict between or conflict over critical raw materials.
Apple claims to have stopped buying conflict minerals from the Democratic Republic of Congo following a criminal complaint by the country. However, some experts believe this move is not a genuine commitment but a temporary measure, while this US tech giant waits for an opportunity to resume its controversial practices.
It's not a sincere move. It is a move that what is more important is to look at the reasons why they give for the suspension. They basically say they did not know or do not know that these were sourced by groups that were involved in conflict or their origins are from a conflict area, which the lawyers rightfully point out is a cause for greater concern, in that they have in place the certification process, which is supposed to check that there are no violations to human rights. But this is not a secret. The UN reports and others have been reporting for years, right, that neighboring Rwanda has been earning thousands of dollars from this kind of operations. So in many ways, it does put into question the certification process that they've been using.
In 2010, activists in the United States launched a campaign to address the use of conflict minerals, often termed as blood phones, in electronics. They highlighted that hundreds of millions of dollars were being generated annually from minerals sourced from Wharton, Eastern Congo. 15 years later, in 2025, Apple continues to rely on these conflict minerals for its products. Now, this suggests that American tech giants, like other Western multinationals, have historically prioritized profits over humanity, building their wealth on the suffering and devastation of the Congolese people and other African communities. Now, what are your thoughts on this, Mr. Logat?
For a long time, we Africans have been very concerned about the lack of a coordinated continental strategy to use the resources for our own benefits, if it meets with the conditions and the approval and the pace of local communities. So, I think that this rush for critical minerals is a cause for conflict, and the discussion has widened from the time when activists started around one company and one area. But the DRC is at the center of our continent and is imbued with a lot of natural resources, which for years, as a colonial estate of the Belgian king, has been subject to severe human rights violations and genocides that have not been addressed. People's hands were cut off, and the tragedy of the colonial period has yet to be exposed fully. So yes, we support this campaign. It is a campaign that has been long in coming, but many other countries that have lithium and vanadium, Zimbabwe, Namibia and others are all having to see how they can best use this for their own people and to make sure that they can keep out those whose aims are war and greed rather than the needs of local people. It's a tough one, but that's what it is.
Rwanda has been accused of supporting armed groups like the M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who control mineral-rich areas and smuggle valuable minerals such as tin, tungsten, tantalum and gold. This situation suggests that global powers, including the United States, are indirectly involved in the ongoing conflict and human rights abuses in the Congo, while tech corporations profit from these minerals.
The fact that the U.S. does not regard Rwanda as an enemy, but as one of its best allies. They reported in 2021 that Rwanda was providing 15% of the global supply of tantalum, as you said, a derivative of coltan ore. And despite that, Rwanda having very little of this resource, right, of its own mines. So the US was buying this tantalum from Rwanda. 36% of its imports, the report said, prepared by the lawyers, that the highest amount of global produce compared only to 7% from the DRC. Rwanda has used an international network of elites, according to the report, to smuggle, sell, and profit from DRC minerals that are transported along militarized trade routes. Kigali has received institutional cover to commercialize these minerals with the help of industry-led compliance bodies, and it mentioned some of them.
We know America's top spy agency, the CIA, was involved in the assassination of Congo's independence leader and first prime minister, Patrice Lumumba, who made a pledge that the country's immense mineral riches and resources would be used for the benefit of the people who live there. His powerful speech during the proclamation of Congo's independence in June 1960 angered Western powers, and this led to his eventual assassination. Let's listen to a section of his speech.
Nous allons montrer au monde ce que peut faire l'homme noir quand il travaille dans la liberté. Et nous allons faire du Congo le centre de rayonnement de l'Afrique tout entière. Nous allons veiller à ce que l'été de notre patrie profite véritablement à ses enfants. Nous allons revoir toutes les lois d'autrefois et en faire de nouvelles qui seront justes et nobles.
Now, it's quite clear that the United States assassinated Patrice Lumumba to have a leeway in looting the resources of Congo. What's your opinion on this?
What is interesting for me is that the lawyers have prepared a narrative to explain to the world why they're taking this legal case. And it's interesting because you need to engage in narrative changing, right? When I went to the CIA World Fact Book just to see whether these groups who are doing this, how are they defined? Because clearly they are profiting through terroristic means. I find that firstly, the CIA World Fact Book on DRC mentions that there were coup d'etats, etc., which resulted. Joseph Mobutu seized power and declared himself president in 1965 coup. They don't say that they had a hand, the CIA had a hand in the killing of his predecessor, right? Patrice Lumumba. So in many ways, the history brushes over. This is all online that they put out. A second kind of thing that was quite interesting for me, when they looked at, as I said, spoke about terrorism, because it's one of their standards that they look for. Terrorist groups, Islamic State of Iraq and Asham, Democratic Republic of Congo, ISIS, DRC. Note, this is what they say. Now, all of us here will talk largely that the actions that the state of Rwanda is involved in, the massive looting and the cleaning out of resources from a country so much in need, where more than 60% of the people are living under the poverty line, really is an act of terror and terrorism. But the US and others do not mention these as terrorist groups. And I say this wherever I have a chance to speak about it, that sometimes we label others terrorists because we do not agree with the choices that they make. What is interesting and historic about this case is that the government of the DRC has chosen to use lawyers, and they're fighting the case in France and Belgium first. Although a lot of fingers point to the collusion of the US state, that has not been ruled out by the lawyers, and it may become a case for the future.
Now, the ongoing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, characterized by targeted and indiscriminate violence, has resulted in over 6 million deaths since 1998, with many victims succumbing to hunger and disease. Now, while the lawsuit against Apple could take years to resolve, what immediate actions can be implemented to address and halt the genocide in the DRC, which is indirectly fueled by the involvement of Western tech giants such as Apple?
I think that the DRC government has to be commended for taking and filing these criminal complaints in Europe. And while all fingers point to the US, it has to start there because it is there where the smelters and all the other production lines actually happen. We think if this campaign works and people don't buy from criminal blood-stained products, it could be one way to raise awareness. But as I want to point out is that there are other minerals used as well on the continent, and the continent could have a lot more other conflicts elsewhere. We don't want to displace it from Congo. Congo has got critical ones around cobalt, which very few countries may have. I think Chile may have, and there's not much around it. So Congo is going to be a test case for us. We need to build popular movements, but the right for Africans to determine their own destinies.
Well, there you have it. The leaders of Africa shoulder immense responsibility in determining the destiny of the continent by ensuring that the people benefit from the continent's immense minerals. I'd like to thank our guest for his insight today. Stay with us for the next part of our program.
France destabilizing Algeria.
The relationship between France and Algeria has been fraught with tension for decades, rooted in Algeria's colonial past and its struggle for independence. Now, lest we forget, France killed at least 5.6 million Algerians during its 132 years of colonial rule over this North African country. Recent years have seen a resurgence of these tensions, exacerbated by reports that French spy agencies are engaged in acts of espionage and interference inside Algeria. Additionally, Algeria has accused France of destabilizing its political landscape by recruiting former terrorists and organizing meetings with groups hostile to the country's government. Now, these serious allegations have led to diplomatic confrontations, including the summoning of the French ambassador by Algerian authorities. The situation has been further complicated by disagreements over regional policies, such as France's support for Morocco's bid to forcefully control the Western Sahara region, which Algeria opposes. The ongoing espionage claims and political disputes have raised concerns about the future of Franco-Algerian relations. Now, how will these renewed tensions impact the broader geopolitical landscape in North Africa and Europe?
The legacy of French colonial rule in Algeria has significantly affected their relationship. Recent events show that tensions between Algeria and Paris have worsened since last summer, leading to increasing uncertainty.
Algerian President Tebboune has been openly critical of France and even called the French language war booty, referring to the long and brutal war of independence.
مثل ما يقال عندنا الفرنسية غنيمة حرب ولكن اللغة الدولية هي الإنجليزية.
President Tebboune has on several occasions criticized France for its colonial legacy in this North African country. Now, how important is it for France to acknowledge its colonial crimes, and what impact will such recognition have on the relationship between these two countries?
The colonial rule by France in Algeria during 130 years is characterized by massacres, by mass murders, by crime against humanity, by atrocities against Algerian people. And I think it's hard for them and for France to accept their own past and their own history, and to look face to face with their past and with their colonial history, and recognize that they have some political personalities in France today refused to acknowledge they didn't recognize what they have done by themselves. They are now looking at the war criminals as national heroes. How can people manage a relation with someone who take this position?
France, as the former colonial power in both Morocco and Algeria, has historically walked a diplomatic tightrope between the two countries. Recently, France shifted its stance and backed Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara, recognizing Moroccan sovereignty over the region. This has negatively impacted diplomatic relations between France and Algeria.
The way to resolve this conflict is the way that Morocco proposed, that makes France itself also out of the international community, because everyone knows that the question of the Western Sahara was on at the UN as a question of the territorial, not the only not independent territory in Africa, and all the international community recognized the right for the Sahrawi people to determine their future by themselves. They have to choose, and the UN has an envoy. There was a ceasefire that lasted from 1990 to I think 2018 or 2020, when Morocco has failed its commitment to go through this process of made the territory independent again. And now France, late this last month or some months ago, said that it considered that what the colonial power proposed for colonized people is the good thing. We can see that France has not changed from its position as a colonial power, and it behaved also as a colonial power till now. And that's not acceptable.
President Tebboune says Algeria demands that France acknowledge its crimes committed during the colonial period from 1830 to 1962, emphasizing that the country seeks no material compensation. Now, why does Algeria demand that France acknowledge its colonial crimes without seeking material compensation, unlike the demands of other African countries?
Okay. I think this also has a relation to the past, the tumultuous past between Algeria and France. France, in some way, always look at Algeria as its chasse gardée, as they say, at its backyard, and along the years. They behave and they take the position that makes Algeria their own, even if it was independent from them. They failed French establishment, I didn't say French government. French people has another, some of the French people have another idea. Some French people was voting, that also to be noted. Some French people have fought on side the Algerian people against their government during the War of Independence. And some of the French people are now criticizing the position of France toward Algeria or toward another territory, toward other people. Some French people are now taken to the streets, for example, for Gaza, supporting the Palestinians against the position of the government, of their government.
Algeria says that the French spy agency DGSE is attempting to undermine Algeria's stability. It appears France is adamant on igniting chaos in Algeria.
The response to it is just in the what has President Tebboune said just after this sentence. He said that we didn't need material compensation, and we need France to acknowledge their crime, because first of all, there's no such amount that can be quantified or for the what Algerian suffers and what France's crimes are about. Some Algerians are seeking material compensation. Yes, we can't. But the position of the President Tebboune, I think, he explained that France has to acknowledge its colonial crime against Algerians. That we can't need compensation because our martyrs, our fellow citizens, our people who suffered a lot from France during that long period has no way to compensate them.
As Algeria distances itself from France, experts predict a prolonged confrontation that could significantly alter their bilateral relations. France's reliance on Algerian natural gas is at risk, which might lead to broader energy negotiation challenges for Europe as well.
Now, what are the potential consequences for Europe's energy negotiations if Algeria continues to distance itself from France, given France's reliance on Algerian natural gas imports?
Algeria, in its way to be a partner for the European community, or all the European countries or the European community, has diversified its channels to supply them for natural gas. And I think it's not, it can't be, even if the political relations have been in their worst level, energy sector is immune from this. And that's a position that Algeria adopts. And Algeria said that always we can't punish people from having energy materials, energy in this, especially in the winters where the demand is at its highest level. But according to the position of their governments, peoples and energy firms are respected partners, and we respect our commitment and our engagement in this work.
Well, there you have it. Algeria respects its commitments, but will continue to demand that France acknowledges the crimes and genocide it committed during its colonial rule over this North African country. I'd like to thank our guest today for his incisive analysis. And that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Africa Today. It's always great having you watch the show. And you can watch this episode and all our previous shows on our website, presstv.ir. On behalf of the entire crew, it's me, Mubarak Kenya, saying goodbye for now.